Hi, everybody. Uh, before I kind of uh, start off, I'd like to just give a background to this whole thing as to how I actually got initiated into this subject of universal design. About a couple of years ago, when Director Pradyumna called up, one day he said, Ravi, you might have to go to Germany, and there is Professor Birgit and Professor Catherine in Germany with the University of Applied Sciences in Berlin, where we are trying to collaborate on this subject of universal design. Then I thought to myself at that time, and in fact, that was my initial years at NID as a faculty where I just joined, having put in a lot of time in industry and things like that. Then I thought to myself, okay, meaning I had heard the subject and the term universal design earlier, but I was kind of, I said, what exactly is universal design? I just thought to myself, I didn't say that to director, of course. Then I started reading about it and I started seeing things, and then I read earlier Professor Balram's works and various other professors earlier. Then it just occurred to me, yes, I mean, what have I been doing all these years, you know? Then when I started talking to some of my earlier friends in the industry and designers, and then I started saying this is what it is and this is what it is, having read, and then I said, then even their response was, this is very true, in fact. Quite a few guys said, hey, I never thought about it that way. Now, before we come to, I'm sure a lot of you would have heard the topic of universal design, which is gaining kind of importance today. It's being called in different terms, in some countries it's called design for all, or it's called inclusive design. And the most popular term that is kind of sinking in today's universal design. Of course, there are a lot of arguments on to things like whether design can be universal at all or not. Of course, there are all those arguments. And in fact, we'll talk about this further. So the background goes to that. And then further past few years, I've been working with my friends in Germany, Professors Birgit and Catherine. We've been working on the subject, and later the idea was to, this whole idea still being envisaged, that we would like to probably look at a large curriculum of universal design jointly, which is there in the background. So this whole paper and this whole thinking, what I put down here, is coming from there. So the picture here very clearly shows, the picture on the other side, Bangalore. This is on the Ring Road, a Manyata estate, which is a software park, where software professionals, educated, it's a usual sight in the country, right? In fact, morning there was a lot of talk about traffic and people. And on the right side you have this device. So subject, then I kind of narrowed down to, of course, one is looking at a large curriculum, that's besides. But then we were also talking amongst faculty that somehow we should bring in this whole subject of thinking, universal design thinking, into the students' curriculum for all disciplines. There was a felt need, and so this is an initial attempt for me. And I will also show you certain examples as to how I brought in a few tools that kind of I developed while taking a few courses on an experimental basis. And a reason I have brought in, I have said, a holistic view and approach to design process is, in fact, I'll be talking more of the design process part of it, and bringing in that thinking and why that was needed, also I'll be discussing it a little later. So there are a lot of definitions of universal design, but everything, eventually it all kind of sums up to what we try to put down. A responsible activity for a sustainable future. Universal design is a philosophy, a way of democratic design thinking. It is about designing for everyone, takes into account human, gender, social, economic, and cultural diversity and differences. And in fact, in India, there is also Government of India's Ministry of Social Justice is also trying to set up a National Institute for Inclusive and Universal Design, which is on the agenda, which in fact NID, we have been part of formulating that in some ways. I mean, somehow it's been that within the Indian intellectual fraternity and academia, it's kind of centered around disability and inclusiveness of disabled people and older people. But it kind of what it tries to say is that while designing, one needs to probably think of a larger user set rather than thinking of that typical archetype or a persona, So one is trying to extend that user set to a little much wider set where one is looking at the extreme users also into that scenario building in your design process. I really like this line by Abir Malik. In fact, I had the chance of working with him also. It's not about designing for them, but us. And this is in the context of the future curriculum, which I personally feel, and I'm kind of conviction that this needs to be brought into the new future curriculum, design curriculum in the country, probably. So a quick preamble. Of course, there was a lot of talk on these, what I'm going to show today in the morning. This, before I get onto the gamut, this whole canvas of India, and this is kind of my kind of definition, which everybody likes to form a definition on design. This is my definition. Every nation or ethnic demography has its own preoccupations, the direct thought and action which determines design. It's a contextual adaptation directed by a need, the democratic, non-violent, useful, rational, and cultural sensibilities. So in this background, this probably is an overarching kind of a thought which across, meaning we had a presenter from Israel, the dean from the design school, and this whole art inclination, and probably this kind of answers something on those lines, when every nation has certain preoccupation. For India, I think when we come to what we'll come to, this is a quick running slides. Now, this forms a kind of background to kind of universal design in India if one is to really probably look at. Highest in diabetes, arthritis affected. Here I like to highlight one part, instead of most of course you're very familiar. Unfamiliar with systemic design. I'll come to this later on, where one is trying to look at migration from rural India to urban India today, which even in the morning it was addressed. When people from interior India basically come to a systemic environment, they get confused, they're lost. Therefore they move around, they cross roads. So it is about the systemic understanding of that system, which is they're unfamiliar. Their whole spaces they are used to are very more organic probably. And this is another example I use to explain to students very quickly that if you look at this image, this lady sitting on the bike, it's precarious. This is a very common scene in the country. If you actually look at it, she's precariously sitting, holding the person in front. And she's probably wearing the synthetic sari. It looks very, she might slip any time kind of thing. So the moment you look at this, you feel, then I looked at, how many motorcycle users in the country, families and all that. It came to that 35% of households in India, of urban households, something like that, have motorcycles. So that means, then I kind of figured out that 40% of users have not been considered while designing the motorcycle. So design for diversity is what satisfies needs. This would be kind of our design directive when one is thinking of universal design in India. So there are a lot of questions people ask. People have like 5 questions. Oh, it's too idealistic. And it is that. It won't work. How will it work? Will it work in India? Everything works in India. I wouldn't say anything works in India. That's very derogatory. Everything works in India. I think that's a very positive statement. So this is one of the outcomes of one of the collective universal design principles which we kind of developed with other academia and in the country. The 5 design principles which have been published. need for rethinking quickly is human is the variable in man-made interfaces. Cultural reaching out for sustainable future. People are meeting, the German faculty are meeting us. We need to connect for the future. Migration from rural to urban. Products are technology driven versus technology built around products. Manufacturing process driven versus process built around design. Product features, marketing language, product features versus meaningful differentiators. That's what universal design will provide. Consumer aspirations, again a very marketing term, versus users' requirements. And I'll just quickly come to the last two lines, which is the most important ones. Typically in design projects, students work on specific users or target audience. They do not see any problem anywhere when we ask them to look for some problems. So I rephrased it for them, said look for an inconvenience. Then they connect, okay. What is it inconvenient for mother to pick up something? Then they connect, okay. Then, so what is the UD way? UD way would be understanding the system and the super system. Context and synthesis, which seem to be the core of design process. Design attributes. At this point, requirements which would include diverse users and use cases versus that specific target audience. This would change the entire perspective of the student while the student is designing something. Compatibility testing for prototypes with extreme users. Incremental is good. One doesn't have to make drastic changes. Technology as a visible enabler versus assistive and on the face. It's not about assistive technologies. It's about technology being an invisible enabler. It looks normal, whether for the young people, whether for young or for old, it looks very normal. The design looks normal. It doesn't look like it's been done for them or done for these people. So here we came up with two typical tools or models, just to give them this universe of these user sets. The first one exercise was look for an object at home used by all in the family and redesign it. So the idea was they build a model around it where in a family you have a mother, father, husband, wife, a baby, a grandmother, a grandfather, house, domestic help in the house, probably a relative lands up in the house. So it's almost a micro environment of a larger user set. So that immediately starts and observe for products which are commonly used by all these people. Then they pick up any of those products automatically. When they apply design principle, design process to it, it tends to become kind of universally designed. Similar exercise we also did for a larger entire urban population, where we took activities, products, spaces, and health, and we took infants and toddlers, adolescents, and on the y-axis, adolescent, youth, middle-aged, and aged. And we mapped all kinds of products, activities, spaces, and health conditions of all these people. So the moment you see this huge lifespan chart, you'll see, okay, if I pick up a product from here, it is across all these user sets. So once I'm working on this product, I need to think of all these people, all these conditions. So this becomes an interesting tool. This is another model that we're looking at for that universal design curriculum. So I would probably stop at this because this is a more of quick design concepts I'll just run through. For just to say that it's not very complex, you can come up with simple solutions for incremental solutions. For the railways, we tried a few quick classroom projects, assignments to get off the train. It's so difficult. You create a subsystem, don't touch the super system. Just create an incremental. People can't get off the top berth. Provide a communication tool which will encourage people or persuade people to offer a berth to the older, meaning people who can't climb up. A few other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. I have a question for you from the audience. You said incremental is good. Can you explain better what you mean, the impact on the design process?
Incremental?
You said incremental is good. That's a statement you made.
You meant incremental is good, I said.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah. Incremental is good is what one is trying to say is that even if you bring in an incremental change into it, a small, you don't have to redesign the entire product for this need. It's probably, okay, to put it very crudely, retrofitting. Retrofit something. But retrofit it such that it looks nice. Simple as that. If you need to retrofit, right now this podium, I don't think it's universal design. I was watching Professor Mathur in the morning. He stood for quite some time and he probably wanted to rest himself on this. And this thing was shaking, and of course it's... So I'm sure this product, this piece, will show up somewhere on that lifespan chart. So that's what I would say, yeah.
Any other questions?
In fact, here, this is probably an incremental, sorry.
Sorry, I have another question. What is the role of systems thinking in universal design? How good are designers in this?
System thinking would be essential part of universal design. And that's why in one of when I said the UD way, it was system and the super system. One needs to understand both. And then in the design process, in fact, because you are dealing with this complex environment, number one, and it also depends on the kind of a brief that you have set for yourself or the brief that has been set. If it's to deal with the whole patient delivery system or something like that, or something to do with healthcare, within that, then of course one needs to understand the whole system and where are these, what are the pain points and who are all the different kinds of stakeholders in that whole process of stakeholders in that whole process. So once you look at the stakeholders, you will observe there are different kinds of people in that whole process. There will be a driver probably who's not very literate. The cab driver who's taking you somewhere in the delivery system. There could be a doctor who's come from abroad who's traveling in that. He probably has to be there for 3 months to treat somebody. He doesn't know the language. Obviously, you have universal design thinking. I mean, one needs to really put it all together.
This is last question. Don't you think UD would cater as average design tool and not specialize?
UD is not specialization. UD needs to be permeated. UD needs to be... that's the reason I said that thinking has to be brought into the design process. And finally, it's not to be... Even the term UD should, in my opinion, that's my personal opinion, that it should fade away as a term, and not become a populist term, of universal design. The whole idea is in the initial design process, when you teach design process students, either through a project, hypothetical or live project, the idea is to bring in these large user sets. Like I remember when I was a student, Setu would ask me, I'd show him a thing, product form, and say, how will the left-hand guy use it? He would just throw that at me, I wouldn't have thought about it. So if he's just triggering my thought, he's just saying left-handed person, it could mean many different people, So that's of course we had different types of teachers dealing with putting questions of different sorts, but which fitted the design process, Yeah.
Okay, that's all we have time for. There are several other questions. Perhaps you can address them over tea.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ravi.
Thank you so much.